A young cousin of mine once propositioned his little sister to give him oral sex in front of his parents. When they asked him where he had gotten such an idea, he told them he heard it from me. Being his main babysitter, and him not fully understanding the gravity of the situation, my relatives believed him. It essentially caused a large divide in my family of who believed I didn't do it and those who thought I did. I wasn't really welcomed at any family functions for a while. Almost was hooked up to a lie detector test, and generally embarrassed by it for years. Later it was found out that one of his schoolmates had been molested by her father and he essentially was repeating back things she had relayed to him. It definitely made me wary of children for the rest of my life. I met a woman once whose husband was a very good-looking man but also very nervous. She explained to me that he had just gotten out of prison after almost 10 years, because a woman finally came clean and admitted she falsely accused him to teach him a lesson. Part of why he was so nervous is that the state of technology had changed so much that he was constantly amazed by everything he was seeing. We were in an electronics store at the time. Man lost a large chunk of his life due to false accusations. They're serious. It didn't because it never became anything. I was at my friend's apartment for New Year's Eve years ago, a bunch of people there. A girl I knew that worked at my friend's bar was seriously into me but I was into someone else. Nothing happened with that, but the first girl and I ended up making out in the kitchen. She left with her friends later and one of my friends started giving me crap for not going home with her, and I was just kinda dude. She was drunk. Message her 2 days later to ask her out, she's enthusiastic but then ghosts me. Whatever. 2 weeks later I'm out with friends for brunch, including 3 people that were at the party, and run into her, say hi, and she just looks me in the eye and tells me I took advantage of her at the party. Stomach drops right out. I'm speechless. Luckily the other 3 people were there and the host cuts her off and says BS, you were all over him. We all saw it. I just shook my head and walked away. Very terrifying what that could have turned into. I had a similar terrifying issue that was all a true misunderstanding. I was with a pair of friends who were a couple and wanted to introduce me to a girl I knew about, but hadn't really met, who we will call B. So the introduction goes well, we all go back to her place to use the pool and drink. My female friend is giving me great advice on how to talk to B. Well, the day turns to night and we are all pretty buzzed. Things turn frisky. My couple friends disappear and so do B and I. We go out of her tiny 3 feet by 3 feet stand-up shower and start to kiss and touch and have a good time. Only, she is way drunker than I realize and she half sits half falls on her butt in a weird Indian-style seating position. So not realizing I try to help her up and she just starts tugging my dong like she's starting a cold lawnmower. At this point I'm catching on that she's too drunk and I'm just trying to stand her up so we can get out of the shower. She's saying no, as in trying to pick her up, saying she wants to bang on the floor. Again. 3 feet by maybe 3 feet so that's not happening. So I'm saying and trying to pick her up B, stand up, and she's getting more and more insistent saying no, let's bang on the floor of course. All my friends over here is no. My male buddy opens the bathroom door, and Charles Bronson me out of the shower. B is still just chanting no at this point and I'm realizing how this looks, despite the truth that I'm trying to get her up and out of her shower at 1 a.m. The truly terrifying thing is B and I hung out a few more times, even legitimately banged sober. When we decided we weren't feeling it anymore, we got into a fight and she brought up the time I tried to rape her. She's the exact type of girl to go off on a pill bender and make some crazy accusations, so I was really truly afraid for a few weeks. Currently in the middle of it. Had a kid 10 years into a relationship with my girlfriend. She started to go crazy after the birth, perhaps developing several personality disorders. Started accusing me of molesting our daughter, rape, domestic violence etc., as a control tactic. I stayed for 3 years trying to tame the beast, still loved her dearly. I thought this was just some hormonal thing that would pass. I left after she accused my dad of molesting our daughter. She claimed full custody and only allows minimal supervised visitation. Her whole family and half of our mutual friends are convinced that me and my family are abusers. I'm currently fighting for full custody. Lost my house, dog, business, partner, child, friends and stuff. Still have my health, sanity, family and job. Going to be a hell of a fight. Wish me luck. I'm a cop, recently promoted to detective. We've been dealing with a woman falsely accusing men, off and on for years. Every 4 to 6 months or so, she finds a reason to believe her little girl, now 3, is being molested. She brings the child to the ER for an exam, the hospital calls the police and we investigate. She accuses someone different each time, and the type of abuse being alleged changes. The only time we ever had physical evidence was when the child had a clear case of diaper rash which the mother mistook for an STD. It puts us in such a terrible position. We know she's a little crazy, we know it's most likely false, but we can't ignore any allegations of child sexual abuse. We've been working on the whole thing very closely with DCF, but we need to get mom mental help without alienating her, so she will still be unafraid to call us if she suspects her child is in danger. Sad all around. I'm no psychologist, but I'm curious if there is something similar to Munchausen's by proxy wherein parents obsessively think their child is abused. I was accused of rape, right at the end of college. It was a very public event, shockwaves were sent through my hometown and headlines reached national newspapers. My name was never printed or anything, but of course people talk. As you can imagine, it's a pretty terrible experience. It was just chaos, incredible amounts of anxiety, stress and trauma. And so I was scared to death. My friends, family, or anyone at all, would actually believe I raped this girl. I had no idea how to act, and mostly I was so traumatized I didn't really function too well socially. I was so broken down psychologically, and would freak out over whether or not people would actually think I raped this girl or not. I would obsess over who wished me happy birthday and not, and try to map out if they were doing it to be nice, what the opinions of their social circle was likely to be, and I would pay attention to who deleted me on Facebook. The first year was the worst, as I moved to a new city and isolated myself. I wish people reached out more, as I never did to anyone myself. But I think most of my friends were young and in general people were kind of shocked by the whole thing. It brings me to tears just thinking about my old friends, and I still struggle to forgive my family for not supporting me better. This is now 7 years ago. The whole situation is just a death spiral, to be honest. Nobody wins. A year after the accusation, the girl sent me a message, saying she knew it was wrong, she made a mistake, she was in a horrible life situation and that she was sorry. My case was dropped after a while, of course. It's funny because I could tell a real difference in how my family acted towards me after that, but well, I was too traumatized and I just tend to withdraw, which I have done more and more for the last 7 years. You won't believe how much I wished to just turn back the time so I could get my life back. Sadly, this is reality. My stepbrother, 5 at the time, told his kindergarten teacher I molested him, which got me investigated by the police, getting home arrested for 5 days and not being able to be in the same house with him, or my mom, anymore. Which ended up on me being forced to move in with my grandparents. On the bright side, my whole family believed me and I got tested by a lie detector about a week later. That whole thing is behind me now. This past school year I was accused of it by a, now old, friend's girlfriend. The entire friend group believed her and left me behind. Had to go through a 3-month-long process of telling our sides of the stories, turning in evidence, and eventually going to a hearing board. The board unanimously decided on me not being guilty. I was asked to leave student organizations I was in because people heard the rumor. Most people on campus don't look at me or talk to me anymore, and there's just been a lot of emotional and mental stress. The hearing ended around 6 months ago, but I still feel the effects as I don't want to really be a social, don't have much motivation, and am legitimately terrified of going back to school. I still have a few good friends who stuck by and my family has been super supportive and always believed me, but I would be lying if I said it hasn't messed with how I perceive myself, how often I wanted to be in public, and my overall happiness. Not physical abuse, but I was accused of sexually harassing a neighbor over the phone. Cops called my parents saying they traced a phone call to my house where a young male verbally harassed, of a sexual nature, a mom that lived down the street. This was the 80s. I'm surprised they told my parents who the victim was, but they did. So I claim innocence because I didn't do it. They believed me, but I was really upset because there was probably lingering doubt. I kept thinking about it and it turns out the day and time it happened I had the perfect alibi. I was at the movies with my dad seeing No Escape starring Ray Liotta. I don't know if it ever got back to the neighbor, she probably still thinks it is me. Wanna know the crazy part? It was her son. He came over and hung out with my sister and he called his mom from our phone. From that point on we avoided them. Didn't want any more drama. Eat crap, Brian. You're a terrible person. I was accused of rape by my best friend's girlfriend, who came to visit me at university after she had an argument with him. She tried to sleep with me, I refused. She went back to our hometown and told everyone I'd raped her. I was threatened with violence on multiple occasions, many of my friends stopped talking to me, I was verbally abused and called a rapist on many occasions. All this even though I was never even arrested. I was very lucky. This happened before the rise of social media, or I would probably have been unable to finish university and certainly wouldn't have a career. It sticks. Like glue. There are still people in my hometown years later who openly say I'm a rapist because everyone knows most rapists get away with it. When I was 23 I was working as the director of a summer camp and youth programming for a large organization. I hired teenagers as staff for the summer and worked with the same teens, 15 to 17-year-olds, during the year with their youth programs. Knowing I was a young man working with mostly girls, I was aware, and I never, ever met with anyone alone. My office door was always open, at all times. I was engaged, life was good. One day I show up to work and there was a cop, a father, and my boss and his boss all waiting for me. They bring me into a closed office and tell me Mary, name made up, told some of her friends that her and I had sex in a closet. I sat there in utter shock and said, "Is this a joke?" After a moment I realized it wasn't. "So," I said, "that accusation is 100% false, I would never do anything of the sort." I was then told that I would be on paid leave. I protested and said, "If you do this, everyone will think it's true." They did. This was on a Thursday. I met with a lawyer and was getting ready to sue the organization and the family of the girl. Friday morning I get a call. Mary confessed she made the entire thing up and she wanted to meet to apologize. Too late, the damage was done. No one looked at me the same. There was always that tiny nugget of doubt. Worst part, my fiancée at the time also had a problem. She never said it, but I could tell she felt there must have been something inappropriate with the way I was or something. We broke up, wedding called off. My only saving grace was this was before social media, thank God. I sent them a scathing letter, but word traveled fast and I was no longer hireable within the greater organization. I moved to a different city, this was 20 years ago. It really bothers me, to this day I still get really upset wondering how much different my life would have been if this girl didn't make up a lie and if she hadn't told the truth so quickly. In the end, it always comes down to one person's word versus another, but it seems society is always skewed to guilty until proven innocent, and then even then, not really innocent. There should be a much harsher penalty for false accusations. I had a girlfriend with 4 grown kids and a 15-year-old daughter. Over the course of years, treated her like my own child and tried to make up for years of lack of parenting, knowing she would soon be moving out on her own. Some great years of camping trips, bike rides, and other activities. My girlfriend was prone to bouts of depression, during which she didn't want to do anything and went to bed really early every night. The daughter and I are on a night person circadian rhythm, so we'd sometimes do things together in the evening. At some point, my girlfriend became insanely jealous of the attention I was giving her daughter. She started making remarks about it, then swiftly withdrawing them. I should have walked away at this point. Twice I talked her down from this, and things were okay for a few months, then she'd start up with the passive-aggressive insinuations again. Finally, she found a Hustler magazine under my couch, and was instantly and completely convinced that it meant I have a thing for young girls. Pointing out that the magazine was dated years before we even met made no difference. I left for good. Now it's 12 years later. The daughter is in failing health and probably won't live much beyond 30. She is extremely grateful for all the activities we did together back then, which she is no longer able to do. I am on barely cordial terms with my ex-girlfriend, but to this day she doesn't understand why I made such a big deal about it. Last year I started dating someone, and several months in the topic of false accusations came up. I reacted rather strongly, then when asked said I had been falsely accused in the past. My girlfriend did a poor job of concealing that she assumed there was some truth to the allegation and that she was now palpably suspicious of me. Let that sink in. A dozen years later, a completely baseless suspicion by a clinically depressed woman is assumed to have an element of truth by a complete stranger with months of time getting to know me. False accusers need to be socially shunned and criminally charged. I really can't stand hearing the argument that doing so will make it harder for real rape victims. I was accused recently in college. Police dropped charges a day after my interview with them, but the college ethics board found me guilty of violating Title IX. I won't speak in much detail about the incident, but briefly, she claims to have been blacked out drunk and doesn't remember anything. Witnesses who were with her all night claimed she didn't drink as much as she said. I didn't think she was drunk and knew it had been at least 4 hours since her last drink and she wasn't acting drunk. But her word against mine and the college board backed her. I definitely didn't force her, She was on top of me when it happened, so this is all about intoxication's effect on consent. The official sanctions against me are academic probation, my presence on campus is restricted to academics only, and I'm supposed to stay far away from her. Couple $1,000s on lawyers got me this instead of getting expelled and suspended. It was a 6-month-long process of investigation from the school. Honestly, I like to pretend that I'm fine, but since this is a throwaway I can say it all. I've experienced some serious depression since, had a couple stints of a borderline eating disorder, and my social life has suffered. Intramural sports were a huge part of my life and well-being, and I can't do those anymore. Professionally, I'm a hopeful pre-medical student, but it hurts knowing that there's a good chance my application will be rejected because of the mark on my disciplinary record. Every time that I've started to think about being in a romantic relationship again, it's horrible to decide when to have the conversation about it. I can't date someone without telling them, that just seems dishonest. All of my friends knew what I was going through during the investigation, and I lost probably 2 to 3 very close friends because of it. I was on OkCupid for a while, and one night, I was talking to this woman. It was a profile for a woman, but I don't know or think it actually was a woman after what happened, and she was into cybersex. I figured it's late, and I've got nothing better to do, so we connected on Skype. She's got video, and she's pretty attractive, so I'm good to go. And she keeps asking me to point the camera down so she can see what's going on. Like an idiot, I do, and after a few minutes, her video feed changes to my own, and it's from a few minutes earlier. Then it changes to my mother's Facebook page, then my alma mater's Facebook page, where I was teaching, then to my old boss's Facebook page, and then to my LinkedIn page. It keeps cycling through these different tabs, and the person starts typing messages to each of these places. Messages like, "My name, tried to rape me, and I'm really scared for my life," and a link to a YouTube video of my video feed from a few minutes earlier. The person says that if I don't go to a link and vote for her for some sort of contest that she'll start sending these messages, and that I'll probably kill myself, because she's going to ruin my life. I'm sitting there frantically Googling what's happening and how to get out of it. My bank account was empty, so I couldn't give this person money, and I explained that, but I'm still terrified that these messages are going to go through. I close my LinkedIn account. I remove all contact information and business associations from Facebook, and notice that I've got all of the privacy settings set to the most extreme levels possible. So much for Facebook security. I report the Skype account and the OkCupid account. I even found someone on Reddit who went through an almost identical situation. While I'm doing all of this, I'm stalling for time with the person, because she's saying if I close out of the chat session, she'll post everything anyway. I tell her that I'm a bad mark, because I have no money in the first place. I even searched the link she gave me on a virtual machine with a VPN, but nothing comes up. Eventually, I think she gave up, because the call ended, and I spent the rest of the night looking through all of my contacts' Facebook pages for any indication that the messages had gone through, but nothing did. I looked on YouTube to see if I could find the video of me, but that didn't come up either. It was terrifying, but fortunately nothing came of it.